Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 84. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has liked, shared, subscribed to the show, commented, left reviews. That support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guests today. Also want to thank our sponsors. Family owned and operated since 1976, Samson Equipment has been specializing in full turnkey weight room build-outs from planning to installation. Based in Las Cruces, New Mexico, Samson provides professional weight room solutions for those looking to lead the way in advancing our strength and conditioning profession. Coaches have relied on Samson as their top resource for all their weight room renovations because they provide the finest materials and design, product customization, and the most reputable customer service in the business. If you're in the market for elite level strength equipment, weight room renovations, or upgrades, be sure to check out samsonequipment.com to see how Samson has been delivering clients a long-lasting yet affordable product for over 4 decades. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code strength_game to save on your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Coach Kendrick Pratt. Kendrick is a strength and conditioning coach at Jackson State University, working with their men's and women's basketball programs. Prior to arriving at Jackson State, he was an assistant strength and conditioning coach at the United States Military Academy, West Point, for the 2022-2023 season, coming from serving as a paid intern at TCU previously. Kendrick began his coaching career working in the private sector at Impact Performance in Columbus, Georgia, before taking on collegiate internship roles at the University of Louisville and Elon University in 2021, followed by a full-time position at the University of Illinois Springfield as an assistant sports performance coach. He's also spent time as a defensive coordinator for the semi-pro North Bank Bulls from 2014 to 2016. Joining the Army in 2012 and earning his commission in 2016, Kendrick currently serves as a Commander and Logistical Maneuver Officer in the United States Army at the rank of captain. Additionally, he is also the host of the Coach's Table podcast, a former collegiate football player at Minnesota State University. Kendrick is still an avid lifter and snowboarder who is ever refining his craft to better impact the coaches and athletes he works with on a daily basis. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Kendrick Pratt. What's going on, everybody? I'm excited today. I am joined by Coach Kendrick Pratt. What's going on, man?
What's going on? Hey, Nick, thanks for having me on the show, man.
Yeah, of course, man. I know you've got your own too, so it's pretty easy going when both people are on this side of the mic, and the conversation can flow pretty easy. So I know yours is pretty new, so we're going to discuss that. We're going to throw everything in the links below, but you want to give a shout out to that so guys can kind of follow along for that?
Yeah, appreciate that. So I have a podcast called The Coach's Table. Pretty similar to what we're going to do today, but if you guys haven't heard of it, seen of it, go check it out. Had some amazing guests on so far and continue to have more in the future.
Hell yeah, man. Well, hey, let's get right into it. I really want to talk about how you got involved in the strength game, like what sports you played growing up, and then what you're kind of doing now for yourself to train and stay active and kind of practice what you preach for your athletes.
Yeah. Growing up, I played pretty much every sport under the sun. Football, basketball, baseball, wrestling, track and field, did gymnastics for like 2 years when I was like 5, right? But we grew up, we were active. I mean, we were not inside. It was, you're outside. We have a farm and like a family farm. So we'd grow up on the farm. We'd be, riding dirt bikes and four-wheelers and chasing chickens and, hitting cows with rocks and stuff. But but we were always outside. We were always active. So we played, every sport under the sun. We have a basketball court in my backyard, like a little half one. And so we'd go play 3-on-3, 1-on-1, 2-on-2. I mean, all day, every day. We'd put the trampoline underneath the basketball hoop and, be trying to do like 360 between the leg, windmill dunks, like just kind of anything and everything. So we were always active. We were always outside and doing something, playing some sort of sport with the neighborhood kids and stuff. So that was fun. That was great. And then, growing up, like I said, but pretty much every sport on the sun. But the big three that I played consistently was football, basketball, and baseball. And then I did track. So it was football, basketball, and then track my what was that, sophomore, junior, senior year. Was fortunate enough to then get a scholarship to play football. That was like my dream. And so I was fortunate enough to do that. And so I started playing college football. But after 3 knee surgeries, that was the end of my college football career, unfortunately. So it was pretty short lived, like 2.5 years or so. But then I was in the military at the time. And so then I started doing that. And that was kind of like my emphasis, right? Change of pace, and got into coaching in college. Actually, I was coaching a semi-pro football team, which was cool. And I was like their defensive coordinator, and it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. And but then once I, graduated and commissioned, I went active duty for about 4-ish years or so, which was really cool and fun. And, just put myself towards that for that time. Like I went to Ranger School twice. Unfortunately, didn't pass either time, but, I was always at the top, always doing, kind of like the PT score in the military is a really big deal, right? So like I was always maxing my PT score out, and getting opportunities from that standpoint, which was awesome. And then, I left the active duty force and then went to graduate school at University of Louisville, where I did internships and I still played and, was just training and wanted to get back into the athletic space. Because the one thing that I missed a lot when I was on active duty was like being around athletes, being around people that, are pushing themselves, that are the higher tier, higher caliber stuff, right? Because I think I just like missed that, and I guess one part I missed, but while I was on active duty, I worked at a private institution in Georgia, and was very fortunate enough and lucky enough, I think, to have professional athletes that were there, to have high level Division I athletes, high level high school athletes, which was awesome. So I kind of got back into coaching from that standpoint, right? And then went to graduate school and then went from there. So went to Louisville, left Louisville after a year to take a job at Illinois Springfield, which was really more like a GA position, but titled as an assistant coach. And I was making like $500 a month. But I was like, I'm getting paid, like I had like 7 teams. I'm there from like 5 to 6:30 at night. And I was just like, thought it was the coolest thing ever. But anyway, so then left there, went to TCU, and then from TCU went to West Point. So that's kind of, where I started to where I'm at now.
Awesome, man. No, I love it. And it's cool to see how active duty life and how you were still able to kind of find your way back into coaching, or like adapt to what military like training looks like, and kind of have to be prepared as like an armor officer. And then the same, like you got to work on your PT scores, got to be stay prepared for like FTX and like all field training exercises, and obviously like Ranger School is no joke when you're preparing for that and when you're getting thrown into it. So when you actually like were originally going to school, obviously like you wanted to play football, you want to get a football scholarship. You were fortunate to do that as well. What did you know ROTC and like the military route was, it had to be a football career that was kind of secondary to military, or how'd you fall into wanting to go the active duty route and then pursuing that in college?
Yeah. So when I joined the military in high school, actually, so I joined as a senior because, I was getting recruited to play ball and things of that nature. It wasn't a full scholarship. And so it was like, okay, you still got to pay for school. And my parents, as amazing as they are, they're like, hey, look, like you got to figure out a way to pay for school. And I come from a military family. So I'm like the 6th consecutive generation to be in the military. And my dad wasn't at the time, and he's like, "Hey, look, I'm not telling you you have to do this, but this is an option. And if you join the National Guard, you can still get all the benefits." And so he's like, "Yeah, it's a 1 weekend a month thing," because like he was in the National Guard too. And so he's like, "Hey, if you do this, like this is a great option for you." But he goes, "If you do this, you're gonna go the officer route because life is better. You get leadership, more money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And so I joined in January 2012. So I was like, still had a couple months left of high school, and then I was gonna go to basic training after that. So like literally as soon as I graduated, 4 days later, I was at basic training. So I graduated, said goodbye, if you will. 4 days later, went to basic training. And then when I completed basic training, I went home for one night, spent the night at my parents' place, and then went up to school and started playing college football. And so it just happens like so fast, essentially. So then when I was in college, I went basic training, I went AIT, and then I went ROTC. So you had to finish AIT so you can get like the S&P scholarship, which is like they'll pay for everything. So that was, awesome and great and very fortunate to that. And honestly, it was when I was playing college ball, the military stuff was on the back burner. Like I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm doing this. It's cool. Like I enjoy it, but didn't really know anything because you're still like so green. But as soon as like my career ended, I just really took the military thing by storm and just said, okay, like I'm gonna, dedicate myself to this. I actually had like a dedicated National Guard scholarship, so it's actually kind of funny. So I went to Bullock as a National Guard officer. And for those of you that don't really know this stuff, you might not understand it, but I went as a National Guard officer, which meant that I was not active duty at that time. When I completed Bullock, I was in like the top 10% of the class. So I got I got a school of my choice, which was Ranger School. So they're like, you can either go to Airborne, Air Assault, or Ranger School. And I was like, come on now, like this is easy. But I had to get it approved by the state. At the time, it was the state of Minnesota. So I had to get it approved by the state of Minnesota. My command was like, heck yeah, like we're gonna do this, like you're gonna go. And so, I went, failed, and then came back, and I was actually working at like Dick's Sporting Goods, Shields, because that's what's in Minnesota, selling shoes. And at the time, I broke up with a girl that I thought I was gonna like be with forever, and I was just like super heartbroken, selling shoes, just kind of like living with my dad still, and I was like, yeah, screw this, and so we had AT, so I went to AT and then came back. And actually during AT, I was having conversations with like the BC and being like, yeah, so I'm going to drop a call to active duty packet. And he like signed off on it and all this stuff. So I literally like went back home for like 2 months and then got my active duty orders and went active duty after that.
Yeah, that's wild. That's not exactly what I thought. And that's
Yeah,
probably not typical for someone that goes the ROTC route
not at
into
all.
that. It's definitely not as clean cut and dry as you think it is. There's messy, and it's cool to see how, especially because I'm a reservist now too,
Hmm.
to see where the military side kind of takes your priority and everything else is on the back burner, and then it
Yeah,
fluctuates back and forth. And then like when you were playing football, you were able to kind of balance the two, but
yeah,
understood that football was going to be the priority until that weekend you got to actually train. And then you kind of flip the script and go active duty from that point. So
yeah.
how has that experience, like you think, helped you as you transition over to the coaching side? Obviously you dabbled in it. You were able to do it like coach a
Yeah,
little bit when you were coaching the semi-pro football team, but
yeah.
strength conditioning side is a little bit different than just coaching football. And now that you've been at multiple universities, like Elon as an
Hmm.
intern, Louisville as an intern, all
Hmm.
those different places, like, and
Hmm.
now you're fully immersed in
Yeah.
that strength conditioning coaching realm. But kind of reflecting back, how has some of those leadership skills and that experience kind of helped you now that you're in like the coaching world pretty much full time?
Yeah. I think it's honestly extremely similar. And so what I mean by that, so when I was a platoon leader, look at it this way. So when I had my platoon, I was an armor officer, so we had 16 guys, right? So for those of you, why 16? Because we had 4 tanks in our platoon, 4 people on the tank at each time. So that's 16 people, right? And so I look at that as a small team, right? Like right now I coach basketball. How many guys are on a basketball team? About 15, right? So I was essentially getting coaching reps without actually like being a coach. And so when I would be in front of my platoon, when I would address my platoon, when I would give them, clear and concise directions or orders, that's essentially what I'm doing when I'm coaching. And so I was essentially getting those coaching reps without anybody really even knowing it, without me even knowing it. But a lot of the things that helped me that I think a lot of people struggle with is like command and control, right? Confidence, being the head motherfucker in charge when you're in charge. I think that's a huge component of it. Like if you're in charge, be in charge, right? And don't be like, I think, no, like, hey, look, this is what we're doing, right? And then it gives you the ability, and it gave me the ability to learn how to say something to a large group and then go and talk to 2 or 3 individuals to like pull out and pull back. And so like go and talk to 2 or 3 individuals and get their thought process on it, come back. If I have to re-give guidance, then give that guidance. And it gives you the ability to like really float, like learn how to float, to be like, let me go talk to this person. Let me go. And what it also does is like, what I learned is you're going to talk to certain people more, but you have to talk to everybody. And so you had to learn to talk to everybody and then make conversation with, the PV2 that is 17, 18 years old, and they've never moved away from home. And now just like you're leading them, right? And so how are you going to make conversation with them? How are you going to talk to that sergeant first class or that master sergeant who's been in for 17 years? He's got a family, he's got 4 kids, and he's getting ready to retire and he's checked out, right? So you got this like super gung ho green person who literally knows absolutely nothing compared to this old vet. And you're this middle guy. At the time I was like 23, right? And you're this middle 23-year-old, but you have to be able to connect and converse and understand both perspectives. And then you're in charge, right? So you got to get that sergeant first class to not only respect you for your rank, quote unquote, but respect you as an individual, so that he's going to listen to you and he's going to come to you with problems and he's going to be like, hey, sir, don't worry, I got that taken care of. And so you have to learn how to do that. And then when you get larger, when I was an XO, right, now you're talking to more platoon leaders, but you're also talking to more platoon sergeants. And then, when you get higher, when you become a commander, it's just that aspect. So now you're leading larger and larger groups of like, when I was XO, it was like 110 people, right? So you learn the aspects of like, how can I apply this conversation from a 16 individual platoon to now, hey, let's be honest, the XO runs a company, the commander's just kind of the figurehead. But now, like, you have to converse with all 3 platoons and you just have a higher perspective. And then when you're the commander, like, okay, I'm focused on my company, but what's a battalion brigade perspective? So I think having the perspective of understanding large scale operations and small scale operations and the ability to have conversation with literally anybody that is 17 to 45 or to, whatever the case may be, and understand where do you fit, how do you fit, and how can you influence both people or all people, both up and down the chain of command, is stuff that I've really like taken. And you don't really get that experience unless like you're in it.
Yeah, you definitely have to be immersed in it too. And obviously like being a young lieutenant or just being a platoon leader like that, it's crazy how they just throw you into the fire. Like you get a lot of reps and you get some practice in the beginning,
Yeah,
but you definitely don't get as much practical experience until you're actually in it. And
correct.
at that point, like you have to sink or swim. But yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right too. Like that is on the military side, like it is very similar to what a coaching is.
Mhm.
You could replace that platoon sergeant with a coach or an administrator, or or a captain of a team. You could replace any of that stuff, like that chain of command. It looks the exact same
Yeah.
as like an intern coach to a GA to an assistant coach to the head coach, the director.
Mhm.
But being able to converse with everybody, be able to talk to people differently, I
Yeah.
think that's super important. But you made a really good point too. Like you do have to talk to everyone.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
you've seen it before, like people like to talk to certain people but they don't know how to relate to some others. And
Yeah.
like the position you're in as a platoon leader or an XO, when you start getting more scalable and it gets bigger, and the range of people you're talking to is much different, the experience level and everything is much different. Like
Yeah.
how was it to stay in communication with and like be relatable as you get older and there's a 17-year-old
Mhm.
that's green, like he's a fuzzy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a PV1, has no idea what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
It's like a freshman athlete. Like, how do
Yeah.
you start to continue to stay in contact with them, but then be able to talk to like a grizzled old first sergeant or a head coach that's been in 25 years? Like,
Yeah.
how do you tailor those conversations, or how do you kind of
Yeah.
deliberately plan out how you're going to talk to them? Because those are very different conversations that you're having.
Yeah, and I think the word you use there is what people need to take as the piece of advice. It's deliberate, right? It is intentional. It is, hey, I know I'm going to see this person today. Like, what if I see them? What am I going to say, right? And it's honestly, it's having an interest in people. I think, I think people are extremely interesting. I think people are so fascinating. I think people are absolutely weird, but I love it. And so understanding that, having those conversations, and then like not pre you can pre-frame, I pre-frame all the time, but like having these questions in your head of like, when I see this person, what am I going to ask them? Start learning about them. And when you start to learn about them, right, I think the conversation becomes much easier. But it's a deliberate thought process. It's a deliberate, when I see this person, what am I going to ask them today? Right. And it's having that kind of in the back of your head for when you do see them. Right. Or if you want to just be completely honest, just go. Here's what I did in college, and I think this helped as well. When I was in college, I went to networking events all the time. Went by myself or maybe knew one other person. That's it. I went to two a week when I was at this was at Bethel University, but also by like the University of Minnesota. I went to two a week, and what I would do is just go talk to people, and then you would start to look at why did the conversation die? When did it die? How did it die? And what I found is the more questions you ask, the longer your conversation holds. And when somebody says something, let's say they're like, oh, I like the Minnesota Vikings. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. Instead of just stopping the conversation there, having the second and third question to come along, like, how long have you liked the Vikings? Have you ever been to a Vikings game? How many games do you go to a year? And like you just ask more like open-ended questions to get them talking. Then you're like, holy cow. When I'd go to the networking event, I'd meet 7 to 10 new people and would hopefully leave with a good impression of like, I knew a lot about them, but they didn't know that much about me, which is okay. But it just started the process of like asking questions. It started the process of like, you know, learning how to bullshit with people, in all honesty, right? Like that's a skill and a craft in itself, but like learning how to do that, which then transitioned into me being a platoon leader, which then transitioned me into being a strength and conditioning coach, which allows me then to, talk to people, I'd say relatively easily. But that's kind of how it works. And just if I see this person, if you're intimidated, if you don't know what to ask them, I think that's dumb. But if you don't know what to ask them, like just figure out like what they like. Ask people around them. Hey, what do you like? How do you talk to so and so? Or like, what are they interested in? Or if they have kids, ask about their kids. What are their kids doing? Like, people love to talk about their kids, so just ask them about it. Like it's just simple conversation. Like to me, it's common sense, but I guess a lot of people struggle with it. And so it's just like if I know I have a freshman athlete coming in, what's a common thing I can ask them about? How is school going? What is your biggest struggle? What is something you're looking forward to? What are your classes like? How are you doing with them? Is there anything you need help with? Blah, 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 whatever. And then 9 out of 10 times, once they give me one piece of something, I'll remember it. And then I'm probably going to make fun of them, right? Like in all honesty, I'm probably going to make fun of them. I'm probably going to crack a joke. I'm probably going to do something of that nature because that helps kind of loosen that conversation up, right? And so then that I might hold that joke for a couple of weeks until I learn more about them, and then we have more from there. But that's kind of how I do it. I don't know if that's good, bad, or otherwise, but that's kind of how I do it, and that's kind of how I've learned throughout my life, if you will. But my time as a platoon leader, as a strength coach, as a college kid, and just kind of showing interest in people.
No, I think that's great advice. I mean, that's like business advice too. It's
Yeah,
the hardest clients you're going to get is like to hook them in the very beginning. Like it's easier to retain clients
yeah,
that are already bought into what you're trying to sell or your message and things. And
yeah,
it's hard to start a conversation with people because it's not going to be just as easy it is to talk to your best friend or talk to
right.
your parents where you've already established that rapport and you have a
Yeah,
conversation with them. So I think you hit the nail on the head, like finding something they're interested in
hmm,
or finding a way to talk about something that they really love. People will
hmm,
go off on tangents on that stuff.
exactly,
And
exactly.
you can ask one question and you'll be talking to them for another hour
Yep,
because
yep,
and you'll have to interrupt them to even get any word in. But
yeah,
now you have all the information, you kind of all the ammo, especially if it's an athlete, that now they feel a little bit more comfortable with you. You can open the door for future conversations. Maybe
yep,
it's harder conversations, or you become the point of contact when something's troubling them,
yeah.
or you can now ask them the more difficult questions that maybe they wouldn't have done. And now that you can get in a little bit more vulnerable state because you have kind of a little bit of leadership capital, you have that trust with them
Hmm.
too, like that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
And I also think it's how you present yourself, right? I think that's a huge thing. Like, if anybody knows me, if anybody's ever met me in person, I'm energetic. I'm dabbing people up. I'm giving hugs. I'm laughing. I'm making fun of people. Like, I'm very bubbly, if you will, which is totally fine. I'm not saying that's how people need to be, but I'm saying it's how you present yourself. So, like, if I go to ask you a question, I'm like, and I'm kind of timid and I'm kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to ask, like, people are going to feel that. Like, that's the energy that they're going to feel. But if you walk up to somebody, shake their hand, look them in the eye, hey, Nick, Kendrick, what's going on, man? How are you today? Like, that confidence exudes, and people are like, oh, okay, hey, what's up? How's it going? Right. And that's something that I learned growing up, and I think everybody needs to learn growing up. Like, go shake their hand, look them in the eye, and say hello. Like, the first day I'm at a new team, I shake every athlete's hand. I look them in the eye. I tell them hello. I tell them we're going to win championships, and I, just kind of go from there. And I look them all in the eye, and I shake their hand, and I dab them up, and I make a joke, and I do this. Like, it's the way that you present yourself in that. If you are having difficulty talking to a 17-year-old or the head coach or whatever, and it's like, first impressions are important, and I believe that. So, like, do it right, shake their hand, look them in the eye, give them a hug, make a joke, make fun of yourself, but be confident. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, be confident. And if you are timid and you're like, I don't really know, people are going to feel that and they're going to be like, eh. But if you're like, this dude walks around not saying that his ego is massive, but he knows who he is. He's confident in who he is. He's understanding of what he is and what he can bring to the table. Like, that just sells yourself that much more right away as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's a Midwest thing too. Like
Yeah,
just to like always be willing to talk to someone else, like be willing to help,
yeah, hmm,
just open, like positive, like that that feeling is infectious,
yes,
especially like in a team atmosphere too. If if the energy, the mood of the room or a lift is down, and
yep,
you can come in and you can kind of change the temperature of a little bit, or just kind of
yes,
start poking on the guys that are kind of the ones that are the leaders in the group,
hmm,
that'll change the whole dynamic. And I've seen people that have like come like my family's from like Illinois and Iowa, like Midwest,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
you see people like just randomly walking up to you at a gas station, like, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, who the fuck are you?
yeah,
And but you
yeah,
any outsider will think that, but everybody else is like,
yeah.
oh, now I'm just talking at the pump for 40 minutes.
Correct. And well, I look at it that way, is like, make a friend. You know what I'm saying? Like, make a friend with everybody. And even when I drive, man, I'm not gonna lie, I wave at everybody, even when I drive. Like, and people think it's annoying. I think it's funny as hell. Because here's why. Especially in today's day and age and society, and that people don't want to talk to each other, right? Like, they're afraid. Like, how many times have you walked past somebody, like legitimately walked past them, and they didn't even acknowledge you? They didn't even acknowledge you existing. They walk past you, they're on their phone, they look away, they look down, right? Like, it's ridiculous. It's honestly ridiculous. Stop and say, hey, how's it going? Like, if they're 10 feet in front of you, hey, man, like your shoes. Like, it's so simple. But we just literally just walk past each other and act like we don't even exist. And I think that's bullshit. And like, the Midwestern kind of the way that I was raised was like you talk to everybody, you shake hands with everybody, you learn to bullshit with everybody, like whether it's over cards or whatever the case may be. Because like at the end of the day, you got to keep a conversation and look at it from the perspective of like if you're with your team, all right, so let's play it out. If you're with your team, it's a brand new team, right? Your energy is going to determine how the next couple of weeks goes. So if you just walk in, you're like, hey, what's up? Hey, how's it going? Hey, oh, okay, cool. I know I'm new. Everybody knows I'm new. Oh, hi. Like, own it. Hey, what's up, man? How's it going? Like, Kendrick, I'm your coach. What's going on? Like, if you own that, like, everybody knows you're new already, right? Like, you don't have to have that, like, be the reason why you don't say hi. So just own it. Hey, what's up? I'm the new guy. I'm Kendrick. Like, if you own it, like, they have nothing to say about you. You know what I'm saying? Just like if you ever watched 8 Mile when Eminem was in the rap battle, he just said everything negative about him and the guy had no ammo at him, right? So if you're just like, what's up? I'm the new guy. How's it going? They're gonna be like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, I know you're new. Oh, I like the energy, dog. Oh, sweet, me too. Like it just makes it that much easier. Like if you're nervous about that, just own it. Like just shut it down right away. Hey, I'm the new guy. They're like, oh, yeah, we know that. I'm like, I know you know that. Like that's what I would say. Like I know that you know that I'm the new guy. So what's up? Like we make it way harder than what it needs to be, in all
Yeah.
honesty.
No,
Like,
just throw it out in the open, and then you've already got past like that weird
yeah,
awkward stage. That hurdle's done. So now you can
correct.
actually get
Be
down to
you.
work or open up. Yeah, be yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. Hey, so you have like very extensive military experience, obviously, like growing up through it, and you spent some time at West Point as well.
Mhm.
So, and we've had guys on the show that have worked at different service academies and everything as well, but you're the first one that's like actually had like prior military experience. So how do you think that kind of benefited you being able to relate to the guys? Because we see it often, like football, like former football players, they love the sport of football, they're done with their career, they want to be football strength coaches, which is fine in itself.
Mhm.
You have just as good of qualified coaches that have never played football that are
Mhm.
coaching it. Um, but just to relate to those athletes a little bit more, like you can rely on some of your like ROTC experience, like
Mhm.
your like platoon leader experience and like your time as an officer. Do you
Mhm.
think that helped you a little bit more when you were at West Point and be able to talk to those guys? And for anybody that like most people are not going to be in that scenario with you, what advice do
Yeah.
you kind of have to someone to maybe like start the conversation with those cadets or maybe get them up to speed on what day-to-day life looks like
Mm.
as
Mm.
like a plebe?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely helps for sure because I'm not speaking in theory, then I'm speaking in from my experience. From my experience when I was at Fort Riley with 234, and they're like, oh, gotcha. And because it was combat arms, and because, like I went to Ranger school, and because of this stuff, like all the things that they want to do, I'm like, I got you. Like, I got you. And so, because I can speak from experience on that, it made me obviously more relatable to them. And they were interested in my time, my experience, what my thought process was. And what I could do was then help them on like the do's and the don'ts. Here's kind of a better way to do this. There's a lot of like West Point isms in regards of like the military side. So things that they will learn here that are only going to apply to West Point that don't apply to the actual army. And so it was able to kind of help them with that and be like, they'd say something, I'd be like, what is that? And they're like, oh, it's that. I'm like, nah, dog, that's not how that works at all. And so like was actually able to kind of help them and show them that like you're playing a game here to commission, but when you get into the real world, you're probably going to forget a large portion of the stuff that you got here. Right. Which is fine because that's the West Point isms. There's ROTC isms and stuff as well. But it's just the difference between schoolhouse knowledge and actual like real life experience. Just like when I go to study for whatever graduate program, my MBA or whatever, like it's going to be different than when you actually apply to things. So, and then like life as a cadet for them is, it's pretty rigorous. Their academics load is very high. And it's not just high as in like a lot of classes, but also a lot of difficult classes, which makes it even more intriguing from a like recovery sleep standpoint. And so that's always interesting to see, hear, and understand. Um, And so that's always interesting. But yeah, I mean, it definitely helped, I would say, for sure. And the ability to then be like a former athlete as well. It's kind of like the perfect mix, if you will.
Yeah, you kind of hit the trifecta, being able to relate to them on every single level.
Yeah.
And I think even if you don't have that experience, like the stuff that you were talking about, having confidence and being able to openly communicate and keep a conversation
Yeah.
going, like you can make up for that stuff and people will forget that. I think the one
Mhm.
thing that it affords you is when you go in and you're like, hey, I'm the new guy and I played sports.
Yep.
Like I'm in the
Yep.
military. Like I've done this. It opens the door a little bit wider for you right off the beginning, that
Yep.
maybe that awkward phase of they're kind of you feeling each other out, like you get a little bit more of leeway with them, because of that, and
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more respect just right
Yep.
off the gate.
Yep. Well, it's just like when I was active duty, and then I was like, "Hey, I'm prior enlisted," and they're like, "Oh, got you. Like, cool. So much more respect now." Um, even when I was a second lieutenant, when I was a butter par, I would say that because they could tell that like your knowledge is different. Like you and I could speak on my experience again. I can speak on my experience of going through basic training, going through AIT, and understanding that component of things, and then being a Joe in an actual unit, a National Guard unit. Like when I was then active duty, and I was like, "Hey, I'm prior enlisted," they're like, "Got you," because I'd have more years in service, right? Than some of the E5s, E6s. And I'm like, how long you been in? They're like 6 years. I'm like, cool, I'm on 8, bro. And they're like, oh, wait, what? And then I tell them, they're like, oh, cool. So it would like earn the respect that much faster. And it'd just be like an instant, like they would just change how they would act and approach it because they'd be like, he gets it. Does that, you know what I'm saying? Like it's the he gets it factor. And so that factor was the same at West Point then as well. Because I was like, yeah, I'm former active duty, I'm an armor officer, combat arms, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, he gets it. You know what I'm saying? Like he understands. So that helps a lot. Been very fortunate from that standpoint. So
Yeah, no, it makes you relatable right
yeah,
away. And I think even if you came in with less experience, you're having those conversations too.
yeah,
Just the way you carry yourself, or kind of the time you spend ahead of meeting them, or like you were
mm,
talking about preparing those questions in the back of your mind. Like
mm,
you understand what they're doing, even if not having that same practical experience and you can't relate back to it, you still have done your due diligence to make sure that when you have those conversation with them, you're as up to speed as you possibly can without maybe going through the trenches the same exact way.
yeah,
Because you can't do every single thing. Like you didn't play
yeah,
basketball in college, but you're able to relate to
right,
basketball guys
right,
because you're able to kind of bridge the gap between, well, even though I didn't play basketball, I did play football. Well,
yeah,
even though you maybe want to go the military intelligence route, I know friends that have done that, and I kind of know
yeah,
what you're
yeah,
doing because I've spoken to guys about that.
yeah,
And I think that's super relatable, either if you're on the military side or if you're coaching, because everybody, if you're doing a good job of what you're doing, you get a new sport, you're going to reach out to all your mentors or friends like, hey, what do you do? I don't know how to train badminton. Can you
yeah,
like help me?
yeah,
I don't even know what this little ball thing is called. Like, can you just I need to know so that I'm ready for my athletes. And
yeah.
I think they know that ahead of time.
Well, and to that, yeah, 100%. And to that, like for instance, I also worked with women's rugby here. I know nothing about rugby, or at least I knew nothing about rugby. And very similar to what I said before, I just flat out told them day one, like, look, I know nothing about this sport. And so I'm gonna rely on you to teach me. Like straight up, because I'm not gonna lie to them. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the worst thing that so then you lie, and then they ask questions, and then they find out that you don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a bad route to go. So I just hey, I know nothing about this. I just want you to know that up front. So like, can you teach me? Because like, look at like, we're always the one teaching them, right? Like, we're always the one, do it this way. Make sure that your knee's doing this. Make sure this and that. Like, if you flip the script and allow your athletes to teach you, just like if you flip the script as a platoon leader and allow your specialists and your sergeants and your staff sergeants to teach you, they will respect you so much more because they're like, I bring value to him, right? Like you are now bringing value in a different way because you're humbling yourself to say, I don't know, which is the best thing that you can probably do. And then From that, you ask questions, which shows interest. So you've admitted you don't know. Now you're asking questions to show interest, and it has to be authentic. And then they teach you, and then your relationship with them grows that much more because you've already admitted that you don't know and you're willing to have them teach you. And if you can do that right away, doesn't matter what sport, it'll help you tremendously. Same thing with a coach. If you ask your assistant coaches to teach you, hey, I don't know the specific skill set of whatever. Can you teach me? Can you, or hey, coach, I saw this in practice and I was curious about this. Can you tell me what your guys' thought process is on that? Oh, that's what it is. Fantastic. Right? Like if you just admit that stuff, like that's it's common. I think it's common sense, but if you just admit it, like it just clears the air right away, right? Or you could say, "Hey, I know a little bit, but I don't know that much." Right? Here's what I know. I know it's super basic. Haha, I'm not that educated. Poke fun at yourself, and then have them teach you. And it's you know what I'm saying. It's to me that's like leadership stuff. That's humbling. That's just being transparent and honesty. And then I've learned a lot about rugby. And now I can have educated conversations with the girls, and then I ask questions about, well, why don't we do X, Y, and Z, right? And so that helps a lot. Like that helps a lot.
Yeah, I think that helps with everything you're doing, no matter if it's sports or it's
Correct.
leadership or it's on the military side. And
Mm-hmm.
it does to people that do it really well. It's common sense. So you
Yeah.
forget about it when you're going to try to like talk to people about it until it just clicks in your mind. But
Yeah.
I think what you said is even more important for people, because you're trying to develop yourself as a coach. You're trying to make sure that you go in and you present yourself as well educated. You're the subject matter expert in what you're doing, but you want to be humble enough that if you don't know a sport or you're learning a coaching staff, you don't want to look like you're coming from square one, but you also don't want to like you said and lie and tell them that like you know more than you do. And I think
Right.
the point, like the way you come in is you say exactly what you said. It's like, I know a little, but not enough. Can you teach me?
Yeah.
Because if you're able to draw upon some like rudimentary stuff, like maybe you know
Mm-hmm.
just how the game has worked,
Sure.
you know how many players are on the field, or you know like certain
Mm-hmm.
aspects of it,
Yep.
then they know that you've done a little bit, but they also know that, and you're not starting from square one, but you're willing to learn because you
Yeah.
don't have the same breadth, like you don't know the depth and of knowledge that
Correct.
they have, and you're showing an interest to actually learn that stuff,
Yep.
um, so
And if
that
you
you can actually
can,
master it.
yeah, for sure. And if you do have the knowledge, like I feel very comfortable on speaking in depth on, if I'm talking to a player about basketball or football or schematics, not that I'm giving them any advice on that, but if we're talking about the differences, for instance, on a 2-3 or 1-1-3 or 1-3-1 or whatever, like I feel confident that I can discuss those, right? And so if you can add value from that standpoint, add value. And if you can identify game situations, fantastic, right? And then if you can do that and talk to your coaches about that too, like that's great. Like now they know, like, oh, okay, cool, he's here, right? Like if you can do that, then cool, do that. But if you can't, don't fake it. Just own it.
Right. And I think it gives for coaches too, like sport coaches that are getting involved in it, the flip side of the coin, when they're teaching you stuff, it solidifies what they're doing. And like, because now they're actually speaking it out loud and they can
Mm-hmm.
think about it as that process is happening. But it
Mm-hmm.
also, now that they educate you and you start asking questions that might seem really dumb or might seem like super common sense for
Yeah.
them, or that they not even thought about it, it could also be a new perspective that they haven't thought, because you're giving them an outside view and they're
Mm-hmm.
involved in the day to day, but you're someone new that's learning about it. And that might give them a new idea, a new spark that starts a different way to
Right.
actually approach something.
Well, that and then, look at it from this perspective. If you learn about their domain, they will probably start to learn about your domain. And
Exactly.
so when coaches start coming to your sessions and asking, can you teach me this exercise? Where should I feel this? Hey, am I doing this right? That is the same as you going to learn about their domain. And so you should take that as a good thing. And the coach is like, hey, I'm doing a 90-90. Like, where should I feel this? Like, whatever. Or like, can you make sure I'm doing this right? And you're like, yeah, absolutely. right? Like that's them being inquisitive about your domain, and you should do the same thing about theirs.
Yeah, you hope that a coach kind of repays that, because then they show that they're willing to kind of expand their knowledge, and
Correct.
they're just as invested as what's going on the field or on the ice or whatever their sport is on the
Mm-hmm.
court, as they are with every layer of that athlete's life, like what they're doing in the weight room, what the school. I think that
Yeah.
schoolwork, their social life, all those sorts of things. I think that all pays into what the final product's going to look like.
Yep.
If we're talking about like sports performance and we're talking about like sport development, all those things tie in together. So
Yeah.
if you're invested in that one thing and it branches out to more, you're just going to get a better product.
Well, that and on top of that, like I agree with that, and I think of it in terms of influence, right? So like if I'm going to sell somebody this cup, right? The first thing I should do is put it in their hand, right? And isn't that amazing how the water just flows out of this cup? Like whatever, right? But I put it in their hand, like I give them the physical product, right? So think of it this way: as when you go to practice and I'm shooting hoops with the guys prior to, the physical product of the basketball is in my hand. I'm doing it. I'm playing ball. I'm giving them passes. I'm rebounding, right? Just as if the salesperson was going to sell me this cup. It's in my hand. When it's in my hand, I now have an obligation, or I feel an obligation to purchase. Once I use the product as well, I now understand how great the product is, right? When your coach comes in and they're training or they're asking about these exercises, that is the physical product in their hand. They're asking about how this feels. Am I doing this right? It's just like the initial aspect of it. And so when that occurs, you are now getting more and more influence with that. And now you can speak on other things. And now, if you want to drop a big knowledge bomb on them, you can totally do that because they're in the moment with that physical product in their hand. No different than you going to practice, throwing the football around, hitting a tennis racket, shooting hoops. You are the physical product at that point in time. And when a salesperson puts the physical product in their hand, their sales go up. Just like your influence goes up when you are practicing the sport, just like your influence goes up when your coaches are training and they're actually doing the exercises and asking you questions about it.
Yeah, it's a great point. And that's a good kind of segue to what I want to talk
Yeah.
about next. So like that physical product, having it in your hands, what do you kind of do with your own training now? Because obviously it's gone from like a bunch of sports, it's gone to football, it's had like some serious injuries, to military preparing for ranger school, to
Yeah.
like what you're currently doing now. How do you
Mhm.
kind of still like explore these new things or get up to speed on a new sport and like feel what they're doing when they're training? Like what does your training look like now, and how's it kind of morphed over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was an athlete, I was, training like an athlete and doing everything that our guys do now, essentially. And so that was cool. And I got strong and everything from that standpoint, which was awesome. When I went the military route, I trained more bodybuilder stylish. I was about aesthetics. I did a show, which was garbage, but like I did that one time and I was like, I'm never doing this again. But more like bodybuilder style ish because that's just kind of the environment, there. But I was different because I was still doing like A skips and backward A skips and sprinting, and I had rhythm and timing and coordination, and I could hoop and I could, do this. There's a different scale than like your average military athleticism, and so I was still kind of like training similar to like an athlete in regards of like my military styles, but I was very like aesthetic driven. I was very, you know, how do I look? Do I have a six pack? Like, do I have a V taper? Are my quads popping? Things of that nature, which I still love the aesthetic side of it because I do think that it's important. Like, you are your physical product. So if I'm trying to sell somebody on like, hey, like we can get you in shape, like I think you should be in shape as well, like eat at your own restaurant type thing. And then as I started training, working at the private sector gym, I was always still doing like Olympic lifts throughout my time. So like my baseline like training knowledge, I just kind of kept that, if that makes sense. So I was still doing like cleans and snatches and the deadlifts and the big stuff, but I was very like, do I have a chest split, that type of stuff. But then I started training with athletes, and it was the same thing. And then I got more into like sprinting, and got more into, like, okay, how does the hip work and things of that nature. And I've just kind of continued to train like that. So what I do now is essentially if I have a thought process on, okay, I want this to be my next block for my athletes, I will do the training session, right? I will run it. I will do that type of thing as well because I think that's important. I also now recognize how important zone 2 work is for myself because one, I like to eat. I like to eat a lot, but I also recognize that I don't enjoy the conditioning side of it. But I know I need to do that for overall health standpoint to stay lean, and to just overall feel better. So I do it. Mine looks like, right now about zone 2 work 2 to 3 times a week for about 30 minutes or so. I'll do that on an elliptical. I'll do that on a bike, a rower, a treadmill. And then I'll, do typically like an upper lower kind of focus, depends. So if I do the conditioning, I'll do an upper body day with that if we'll look at like readiness and central nervous system readiness. But then I'll do like, lower body focus stuff on the other days. So, I train 5-6 days a week, and I still do everything that my athletes do. I sprint, I jump. I'm not good at it because I have a really bad knee, but I still do those things. I still pride myself on squatting more than my athletes. Pride myself on deadlifting more than them, and like I just look at it as, oh, okay, like sometimes I'll hop in the middle of a training session if they're being wussies, and I'm just like, oh, cool, like 225 feels heavy today. Well, I'm gonna hit some reps, something like that. So because I think it's cool and fun, but I still train, essentially like an athlete, if you will. And I like to do rhythm and timing and coordination things. I think that's really important because also when you demo it, if you hit that demo good, they get fired up, right? If you suck at that demo, they're going to be like, nah, we're not doing that, right? So, yeah, I still train. I train consistently. I obviously still do some bodybuilder stuff because I like the way that looks. So it's just kind of an all around training thought process. And at times, I will say I don't follow a training program. I'll just go in there and I'm gonna hit upper body today, and get a pump. And then at times I'm like, okay, cool. Like I really need to. I'm gonna follow this. So it depends. I'm gonna say, but yeah, I try and train as similar to them as possible. I also found out when I did 75 hard this past season. Well, I did it for like 53 days. I failed it, but when I was doing that, if you guys aren't familiar with 75 hard, but when I was doing that, what I noticed was my athletes training increased as well. And because they would see me walking on the streets over here at like 8:30 at night, and they would drive by or something, and they'd pull over and talk to me. And they'd be like, how many minutes do you have left? And I'm like, I'm at 27 minutes. Like, I'm going to pause this to talk to you, and then I'm going to go again. And so it like, because they saw me doing it. And then that was a conversation piece, right? Like, what day are you on? How's it going? Whatever. And so that was like a conversation piece. So I think if we as coaches can push ourselves to do things, maybe it's 75 hard, maybe it's you're still a competitor, maybe it's whatever it is. I think that's a huge piece to show your athletes that like you're still in the game as well. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm still training, I'm still doing these things and you're seeing me do them. And I think so then when you preach about it and you talk to them about it, they know you're coming from the place of like he's doing it, right? Like you're coming from that place of like I'm on day 53 and I'm wired right now. Like I am wired and I don't give a shit about your excuses. They understand that.
Yeah, that coming from a place where you're still involved in it, and it doesn't have to be at the same level. It doesn't
Correct.
have to be what you were doing previously, but you're finding a new way to challenge yourself. Maybe it's picking up a new sport or it's picking up a different way to train. I
Mm-hmm.
think when you become a novice at something again and you go through the struggle of the ups and downs, that roller coaster ride of I'm having a great day. Hey, I don't want to be here today, but I'm going to grind it out. Like I'm going to do these sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely see it and they can tell, and you're able to relate to them about those sort of things. I've always had that conversation with coaches that have been in it for a long time to say like, what's one way you kind of relate to an athlete that's 18 coming in and you've been in it for 18 years? And a lot of them that are worth their weight in salt are the ones that are saying like, I've been picking up a new sport. I've been doing something different. And like, I know what it feels like to suck at something again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
or be able to balance my training cycle with what they're doing. They're going to school, they're trying to manage all these things. Like
Hmm.
it's hard for me to feel like a freshman college player
Yeah.
when I barely remember my time there, but I'm doing something now that puts me kind of in that same frame of mind that challenges me in a similar way. And I feel like I'm reinvigorated and I can talk to them the same way, and they can relate, even if that age gap is completely different.
Yeah. 100%. And I just think it's like when you speak from experience, your tone is different. And when your tone is different, the message hits different. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember this when I was in college. This is kind of funny, but I remember that like my degree is in entrepreneurship. And I remember specifically my like academic advisor, professor, whoever, he was preaching on about how to be an entrepreneur. And so like I asked the question of like, what business have you ever owned? Like, what have you ever done from an entrepreneurial standpoint that gives you kind of the right to speak upon this? And I remember he's like, I tried to start this and it didn't work. And I'm like, okay, but how long ago was that? And it was like 12 years ago. And I was like, so you have no grounds to speak on being an entrepreneur when you've never done anything entrepreneurial in your life. And so, that is really funny to me because it's like you can't preach a message you've never done. And so if you're a coach and you're not training, you can't preach the importance of eating right, sleeping right, training hard when you're not doing it yourself. It's just like talk to a business, like business owners can smell other business owners or fake business owners because of the way that they talk and what they talk about. Because if you've never been in the trenches, you don't understand. Just like I can talk to the military piece because I've been there, I've done that. I can tell you the intricate details, I can tell you the stories. So if like you're a coach and you're not doing that, when you try and tell your athletes how important it is, they're gonna flip the script and be like, well, coach, like, what about you? Does that mean you have to be perfect? No, it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. But what that means is you have to try. You know what I'm saying? Like you actually have to try. You actually have to be like, I train, here's what I do, right? Like I want to improve my dunking. Okay, I do this. And then if you want to make yourself really good, just like showcase it and record yourself doing it. Like your athletes watch you on social media. So like show it. You know what I'm saying? And then they could be like, oh, cool. Like I saw that you did that. Like when I safety bar squat 500 pounds and I post it, like, and they're like, coach, I saw you squatted heavy today. I'm like, yeah, I did. Fucking right. I got after it, and then they're like, it's 500 pounds. And you're like, yeah, man. Like, they can't say anything because now they're like, cool, he gets it. You know what I'm saying? Like he gets it, and you can have that piece to speak on.
No, that's great. And I kind of like what you talked about too. Like sometimes you're not just following a program, you're just kind of going in and making it fun again. I found
Yeah.
myself like getting back from training. That was one thing I wanted to do. Like I I had friends that were texting me like all these competitions to do, and all I wanted to do was get back right into it. And I was like, you know what? This is probably the only chance that I have to kind of just go back into the garage or go in the weight room and just whatever I feel like doing today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then get reinvigorated, get like excited to like follow a program again because I
Hmm.
didn't have that opportunity. But um it's definitely something that kind of sparked my interest. And it's cool to see like when you go in because you keep it fun, then you kind of keep it
Yeah.
going for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. But that and like I'll be honest and say like I can't follow my own programming. Not because I suck at it, just because I don't have the discipline myself to follow my own program. I'm gonna be like, nah, I don't want to do that today. I'm gonna do this instead. But I prefer when like I follow another coach's program, because then I feel like there's that accountability piece there, right? And maybe I should be more accountable to myself. And sure, I'll recognize that. But like when another coach writes it, and then you can ask questions, I like that so much more personally. Um, but that's just me. I don't know.
No, I have that same feeling because you'll talk yourself out of it because you're the creator of the program
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
also the one following it. So even if you feel like you do have like the better judgment, like you write a good program, you're still always going to go back to, well, I could tweak it this way.
Yes,
And
yes,
you don't
yes.
know if that's making it easier for the sake of making it easier,
Yeah,
or if you think that's a better programming tool.
right.
I found myself doing that all the time, and it's
It's
hard to tell. It's hard to tell whether you're doing the
yeah.
right thing or not.
Yeah, exactly. I'll talk myself out of it. I didn't sleep today, blah blah blah, whatever. Um, so I just like it. I just like I'd rather do somebody else's um, for that component of it. Some one that somebody else wrote, and that's just me. That's just some things that I've learned.
No, that accountability piece too, I think is crucial.
Yeah,
Like being able to talk to that coach and see what they were feeling, what the rationale was behind it. That's important. But
yeah,
also you feel the same as like you were talking about, like selling the cup, like you almost feel obligated to do it.
yeah,
And you feel like when you're not doing it right or you're not putting in the full effort, you lose like a little bit. You feel bad about it. You feel like you're letting that coach down in a way,
yeah.
or
Oh,
whoever's writing that
100%.
program.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing that you don't get when you write your own or you follow
Yeah,
your own program. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
agree with that, man.
yeah, yeah. It's
Hey,
great.
like any good training session, we close off the show with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters,
Sure.
4 questions, and maybe overtime for you. But you can go rapid
Okay.
fire with them, or you can take your time and elaborate on each one. But you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, first one. Biggest influence in strength and conditioning and favorite athlete growing up.
Ooh, favorite athlete growing up, Ray Lewis, for sure. Biggest influence in strength and conditioning. I'm gonna say, my mentor. So the whole Elon Performance staff, and then Zach Dakins.
There you go. Hey,
Hmm.
so when you're not coaching, you're not training, what are
Yeah,
some of your hobbies outside the weight room walls?
yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of this. I just put a tweet out about this the other day. Um, Coaching is fantastic. I love it. It's not your personality. You have a life outside of it. So, I mean, outside, I'm snowboarding, I'm out shooting guns, I'm hiking, I'm going to different restaurants. I love going on adventures or just, driving around and seeing what the world brings. But as soon as I can go do my hobbies, I'm doing that. My weekends are my time. If I can be out on the mountain boarding, I'm there. I'm there all weekend. Don't call me, don't text me. But I also love to hang out with family and friends. Love to be with dogs. So anytime I can hang out with dogs and just kind of do that thing, yeah, just try to be a normal person outside of work and not have Friday, Saturday, Sunday consume you. I still read. I love to read. I do read training books. Yes. I do read business books. Yes. So I like to do that. But outside, outdoors, active on the farm, hunting, shooting, snowboarding, eating, drinking because I'm an adult, and just doing things of that nature, just like a regular person.
Love it. Hey, so if you weren't involved in strength conditioning, what do you think you would be doing as a profession? I know you've already gone the military route, you're still
Yeah.
involved in it. So if it's not an armor officer and it's not a
Mm.
strength coach, like what do you think you'd be doing as a profession right now?
I'd be in sales. If I'm being honest. And I'd be in sales, acquisition, or owning my own business is what I would be in. I just think selling is the number one skill set you can have. Even though we're strength coaches, we still sell. We sell ourselves, we sell our program, whether that's online or in person. I do think all strength coaches should be online and selling programs online. Business aspect of things, so acquisitions, learning how to acquire businesses, learning how to be a business owner, learning how to build businesses, I think is a fascinating thing. I think it's so amazing because there's so many skill sets that come with that. Marketing, email marketing, things of that nature. It's just so freaking intriguing to me, especially where we're at in the world today. I think the number one thing that we can do is start owning businesses. Real estate, I would be in real estate. I would kind of do all of that. So I'd be selling. I'd be looking to buy businesses. I'd be looking to own real estate. I'd be looking to own apartments. I would be doing things of that nature, looking to own businesses. I absolutely love that stuff. And because it makes you a lot of money. And I think the number one thing that we can do as strength coaches is make more money and learn the skill sets to make us more money, and understand what you can do to make more money. And that's what I would do 100%.
I agree with that. Hey, if you're setting up an ideal training day for yourself, what is playing on the radio, like either a PR song or radio
Mm,
station? And
mm,
then after you hit that PR or it's a
yeah,
solid training session,
yeah,
what is the best post-training meal look like?
yeah, 100%. So I'm gonna say either country, love. Okay, man, three things: country, Christian music, Christian rap, um, or gangster rap. Man, you will get. I will rap every song. I'll sing every song, but either some like hardcore, like '90s hip hop, '90s rap, country, like 2000s country, or like some Christian music that's like real slow and like um, we're singing to Jesus. So that would be kind of my top three. Best post workout meal, sushi, hands down, hands down.
There you go. Hey, last thing I got for you.
Mhm.
What is the most valuable piece of advice you've received? And if you want to share from who, and it doesn't have to be strength conditioning,
Yeah.
what kind of drives you?
Yeah, man. I just heard this the other day and it absolutely hit home with me. And this is from like Alex Hermosi. And he said, volume is the answer. Well, let me make sure I get this right because I texted it. Sorry, because I like it just like absolutely hit me. Give me 1 second. I
Are
have
you
it
good?
here. Sorry, because I don't want to mess it up. Let me find. Okay, it's right here. Let's see. Um, volume is the answer, and time is the ingredient. And that just like really hit home with me because it makes so much sense to me. Like if you want to get better at anything, you have to do reps. Reps is volume, right? Like we know that. So you have to do reps. So your volume, the amount of reps you do is the answer. Now, the amount of time that you've done that for is the ingredient, and that's the intensifier that can shorten or lengthen your time period. And so, like, if you look at it from a skill set, if you look at it from a business standpoint, if you look at it from a sales standpoint, like if you're calling more people and I'm calling them longer, I'm going to win, right? If I look at from a running standpoint, whatever, volume is the answer, time is the ingredient. I thought that was extremely philosophical. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. And that hit home with me. And I was just like, man, that's where it's at. If you want to do something, do it a lot, get really good at it, and your time window was shortened.
I love it. Yeah, that's kind of it's like a different take on the 10,000 hour rule because
Yeah.
I think everybody's probably heard of it or like agrees with it, doesn't agree with it, but more importantly than just trying to shove 10,000 shitty hours into a small time frame as possible, like it's about the quality you do it and it's about how you want to space that out over this course of a career or maybe
Yeah.
you don't make it that far. That's a really cool way to put it. So I like it, man.
Yeah, and I read something this morning that Kobe said, and it was just like it's not about the amount of hours that you practice, it's about the amount of hours that your head is in the practice. And I thought that was really good too. It's like I could sit here for 5 hours and said that I did work, but if I messed around for four of those 5 hours, like, and my head was only in it for that 1 hour, then I practiced for 1 hour, not five.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey man, this has been awesome. For anybody that's got any more questions for you, kind of want to follow along, listen to your
Mhm.
podcast, where can they do those? We'll put the links below, but give a shout out to all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so follow me on Instagram, coach underscore Kendrick 44. Twitter is the same thing. Very active on Instagram and Twitter. That's the best place to reach me is Instagram and Twitter. I also have a YouTube channel that's called The Coach's Table. So you can go and subscribe to that, which is where I drop my podcasts as well. And they're also on Spotify, Apple, and like 16 other audio platforms. So the best place to reach me, Instagram, Twitter, my podcast is The Coach's Table. It's on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, you name it. And then the YouTube channel is The Coach's Table as well.
Awesome, man. Hey, well, I appreciate you coming on to the show today, man, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, hopefully up in the mountains or something.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate that. I'm glad to spend a little bit of time with you.
Of course.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.